Brett, what is going on? Man, it's so good to see you, all your charismatic self.
Trying, brother. That's the idea, is trying to help men just feel a little bit more charismatic, a little more comfortable in their own skin when they're with their family, with their friends. I think we've all got that innate charisma deep down inside of us. We've just got to let it come to the surface in a natural way. And I appreciate you letting me be on the show and share some tips with the audience here.
How did you even get involved with this work? I'm just so curious about it.
Oh man, it has just been, I'd say it's just kind of something I've always gravitated towards. I've always found it to be fascinating, just communication skills, charisma specifically. I've always just found myself reading books on it, whether it was, how to win friends and influence people and so many others. It's always been a topic I've gravitated towards. I just think that effective communication fundamentals is a skill that it doesn't matter if you are a CEO, you're a salesperson, doesn't matter if you're a construction worker, whatever it is, we all communicate with each other on a daily basis. And I think it's a skill that we all need to be honing and working on to be better at who we are.
Was that your first exposure to it? Was it Carnegie's book on how to win friends and influence people? That's like one of those iconic books that a lot of people point as like a foundational or a big pivot point in just how they interact with people on an everyday basis.
I'd say so. I mean, I think that book definitely just drives home, really drills in that lesson that, the more you let people talk and the more that people talk about themselves and you actually sit there and intently listen, the more people are going to like you. I mean, it's really that simple. If there was ever just a hack to being a likable human being, ask good questions and then just sit back in silence and actually listen to what they say. I think that was probably my biggest communication fundamental that I took away from that book. And it's one that I really put to use in my life, in my podcast, in sales, in business. I think that if you're one of the few people in someone's day that asks them a genuine question and then actually listens to them while they speak, not thinking about what you're going to say next, not thinking about why you only got 200 plays on your last Instagram reel, but actually sitting there and absorbing their message like a sponge, then you are going to be so far ahead of the game. I mean, people really appreciate that.
I agree so much. I actually came from a sales background. And, if you really, really, I remember going through pharmaceutical sales training and it was so robotic, like so robotic. And it was almost like, how quickly can you talk before the doctor goes into the room to see the next patient? And I just found, like, even early on, like even in my early 20s, right out of college, I was like, this just does not work. In fact, it annoys them. And I actually found that book in the early 2000s, the How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I just was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I just started like leveraging some of those things because, to be honest, like the things that were in that book came naturally to me because like that's just how I have always operated. Even as a kid, like my mom always called me like this curious kid. She's like, you always ask people so many questions. And I was like, oh, I just want to know about them and or a topic or a subject or whatever. And like me being in that robotic sort of, training regimen where we had to go in and talk, 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 talk. It felt so unnatural to me. And as soon as I flipped the script, and like I'll never forget, like my first year in the territory, like my territory exploded. Like it just did so well. And my boss came in to ride with me one day, and she's like, and I thought I was in trouble. And I have to come out and ride with you because you're the number one rep in the region right now. And I'm trying to really gather information on what you're doing so I can pass it on to the other managers because they're really curious. And I took her out to see my customers. And I think we talked about product with my doctors, maybe 7% of my sales call. And we'd get out in the car and she'd kind of razz me. She's like, you didn't even hardly go over features and benefits. You didn't close them or anything like that. I was like, no. And she's like, well, I don't understand how you're having all this success. Is this what you do every day? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you just build relationships. You're just building relationships with them. I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, well, I can't pass this information along to the other managers because they're looking for somebody to really highlight what we've been training these reps to do.
Right.
I told her, I was like, I don't think it works too well,
I love
at
it. And
least
that's
not for
pretty,
me.
I mean, that's really interesting that you say that too. And I'll be honest with you, and just from having conversations with you in the past, you were on my show, Persistence Playbook, a couple of months back, and I could tell that innately you're just kind of a good listener. It's probably been a skill of yours since you were a child, and that you enjoy asking questions and getting to know people and learning about people. But that is something a lot of people struggle with. I don't think most people are naturally good question askers or naturally good listeners, and it's a skill that I think most people really do need to work on. I mean, I know sometimes I'll hang out with some buddies, and at the end of hanging out with them, maybe we were together for 2.5 hours. Maybe we went on a hike. I'll think to myself, my God, I don't know if he asked me a single question about myself. I mean, I think I might have just fired off 15, 20 questions because that's just kind of what I naturally do. And I don't think it's that he wasn't interested. I just think some people have a little bit of fear and anxiety about asking questions. I really do. I think, when you think of a good question to ask someone, like maybe something that dives a little bit deeper, not just a general question like how's work or yada yada, but maybe like an interesting question that really is going to elicit an interesting response. There's some fear that kind of wells up in your stomach, in your chest, and your heart, and you've got to make it a habit of getting past that fear and asking those questions, those interesting questions that are going to dive a little bit deeper with your friends, because those are the ones that are really going to cultivate meaningful relationships.
I agree. I 1,000% agree with that. I want to ask you a question though that's kind of been it's been burning on my mind, I think, for the past couple of years around conversational excellence. So um I I I took a coaching course that took me 50 plus hours to get through. It was called Exchange. It's based around appreciative inquiry, which is basically the best of what was, the best of what is, the best of what could be, and it's all about asking your client, and people around you really good deep questions that elicit solutions and not focus on why is this just the status quo, right? So the interesting thing about that is I learned about psychology of conversations, bring out the best in people, connection, all those things. And I appreciate you sharing that I'm a good listener because I am a good listener and I'm really good at asking questions. I talk quite a bit too. But we were actually, we were taught during that particular coaching certification to have an exchange. It's like, hey, you can't it's really, really good to be interested in people. And it's really important to ask good questions. And it's really important to be a good listener. But you can't do that like 98% of the time because over time, the other person starts to feel like while they think you're interesting and they like you, they also feel quite a bit interrogated. And what a lot of people want too is they actually want a back and forth conversation. They don't want necessarily the entire conversation to be all about them because then they miss that relatability factor, of like, hey, what's the common ground that we really land on? Instead of me just answering your questions, like, what do we have in common? Like, how do we have better just back and forth and that kind of thing? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? You can't just sit there and ask someone 90 questions in a row without actually giving an opinion on anything yourself. That's going to probably freak people out a little bit. So I could definitely understand why people would, want to steer away from that. And to me, I think of conversational excellence, which I think is a phenomenal term, as kind of a spotlight on a swivel, right? And spotlight's on me for a little bit, and then I shine it back on you. And to me, the best ratio is 60% on your conversational counterpart, 40% on yourself. Give them a little bit more of the stage than you're taking yourself. Of course, important. If you have something to say and an important tidbit to add to the conversation, then you're only adding value to that conversation by saying it. To not say that would be honestly not fair to your conversational partner. But I think where people make this mistake or make their mistakes in conversation is they're listening to their conversational partner, and they're doing their best to really stay engaged with their message. And then midway through their message, they get a thought in their head. They're like, ooh, I've got something cool to say. Like, can't wait to say this. And then they're just waiting for that other person to stop talking so that they can talk. So for me, at least what I think, what I've learned in my studies on communication, the most effective way to do this is to be fully engaged with the other person's message, like really give them the spotlight, focus on their voice, focus on the way they're moving their face while they're speaking, like really absorb their message like a sponge. and let them finish. Always let people finish. Don't interrupt them. Even if you've got something nice to say, even if you want to congratulate them, you've got a warm thing to say, they're going to appreciate you holding that off until it's your turn. Let them land the plane. Once they land the plane, take a millisecond, take a moment, let your face absorb the message first, smile, cringe, whatever it is, and then respond. And I think that's the key. That's the key to conversational excellence. Let people land the plane, give it a moment, and then interject.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Because I do think it needs to be a back and forth. I do have a question before we get to, by the way, some of the things that you talk about, which if you want to engage people, you have to have power, warmth, and presence, those three things. And I really want to dissect those three things. But before we get started, I'm not sure which one this would go under, but it's always something that has totally thrown me off, like during conversation. And it's only happened with like one, two, maybe three people, but one of them is actually my dad. So, and I'll share this with you. So,
Share me.
I've always been curious, like, because we can't see ourselves, during a conversation. But one of the things that I've always wanted to do is like, what do I need to do with my eyes, my face? I'm pretty certain on the body language, but like, what look am I giving a person? Because I notice when I'm intently listening to somebody, like, and I'll just give you the look on my face when I'm intently listening. I'm more like this. And it probably comes across like my dad does to me. Like when I start to talk, my dad's like,
Right. Like the
does this.
furrowed
And
brow.
yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, for those of you guys who are not watching us on YouTube, it's kind of like this. Like it's kind of like I'm puzzled, but I'm sort of angry and I'm intently listening. But in my mind, like when I started talking to my dad, I was like, why is he looking at me like I'm a total idiot? Or
I
like what
love
I'm
that.
saying to him makes absolutely no sense. I feel, I'm not kidding, most of the time when I talk to him, whatever I'm saying is either confusing or totally not important to him. And I know that that's not what's going on in his mind,
I
but
love it.
that's the way it comes across. And I'm sitting here thinking like, my God, like, what if I do that to my kids? Right. Like, I don't want to do that to my kids. I want to be like, hey, dude, whatever you're saying, man, like I am all in. Right. But I don't know what I don't know. And I probably have some bad habits. So what is it? What do we do?
Well, I mean, I will say that the furrowed brow is probably something that we want to avoid, right? It just kind of it puts a big crease right in between our eyes. Like no one looks better with like the furrow caveman brow, like they're first discovering fire, Like that's not what we want. And to be honest with you, I don't think that's what you naturally do. When you're listening to me, I think you've got some great nonverbal behavior going on over there in the studio. And I think really what we want to do when we're listening with our face is just relax. Just relax your
Okay.
face, relax your eyes, relax your jaw a little bit. I think we hold a lot of the tension in our faces, in our jaw, and in our eyes. And if we can just relax our eyes, maybe even close them like almost 10% of the way. And I think that's kind of like a relaxed eye. A jaw that's maybe not clenched, but open and kind of hanging ever so slightly as a relaxed jaw. Avoid the furrowed brow. And another thing I think we want. So basically, there's two keys. One, avoid facial tension. Facial tension is going to make the person speaking to us a little bit nervous. They're not going to like the feeling they get when there's a lot of facial tension going on. The crow's feet and the big crease and the nervous looking face. Avoid the facial tension and also avoid excessive nodding. And I think this is something a lot of us fall into is we look like the bobblehead doll, right? When we're talking to someone, our head just starts going up and down and up and down and up and down. And I think the occasional nod is good. Show them you have a pulse, show them that you're engaged in their message. But to just sit there and nod over and over again kind of gives off the impression that we're seeking approval. So I think two things while we're listening: avoid facial tension, be a little bit more still, and avoid the bobblehead technique. I think those are the two things that we should do while listening to really make the talker at ease.
Got it. Okay. So just out of curiosity, as I was listening to you, I was following these things. What did it feel like on your end? Because I was trying to like really, this sounds really weird, feel into my face. Like, what is my face doing right now?
Mhm.
And I'm trying to like follow along with it as you're giving those instructions. So, like, as you were talking to me, did you feel that I was intense, I was engaged, I was warm, present? Like, what was your feeling? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I felt you were engaged, but I
Okay.
also didn't feel an anxiety in my chest that you were like too intensely focusing on what I was saying. It just kind of felt like a soft focus on my message, which I think is what puts people at ease, and it makes them feel, more comfortable and much more likely to just really share their unique message. And I think that's what we want from people. We want them to be comfortable sharing their unique message with us.
Yeah, I like that. You mentioned something early on in the show, early on in the beginning, where you talked about like just bringing the corners of your mouth like just slightly upward. Is that correct?
I think that's a fun little hack. And that, that is something that there's studies that show that even just by, pointing those corners of your mouth ever so slightly up, even so slightly that maybe the person you're with might not even see it, but only you feel it, it's just going to make you feel a little more confident. It's going to make you feel a little bit more warm, and they're going to feel that warmth. So to me, when you're going to like a social outing or you're going to a barbecue, it's a good idea to have one or two communication skills that you're working on, and write it in your to-dos, write it in your notes. I always do. That could be something you work on at your next barbecue. Just say, I'm going to ever so slightly turn the corners of my mouth up while I'm listening or speaking. And I'm just going to see how this produces. I'm going to see how this feels. I'm going to see if people react to me a little bit differently. I think it's important to practice these skills out in the wild. And I think that, barbecues, parties, birthday parties like that is the perfect place to practice a skill like turning the corners of your mouth ever so slightly up.
Very cool. What about just regular body language? Like I've heard, especially when you're talking to people you care about, right? And maybe the topic's a bit triggering. If you're nose to nose, toes to toes, that could mean like it's me against you. And maybe it's better to stand just slightly sort of next to each other, or like a 90-degree angle, or you're just slightly at an angle with someone. That way you're not like eyes like right across from each other. Is there any truth to that?
No, there is. And there are studies that say you're better off at an angle, especially when it's a guy speaking to a guy. A guy speaking to a guy straight on, studies say can really make it feel like a very competitive environment. Where so when you're talking with a guy and maybe you're at a meeting for the first time and you're feeling out the vibe, try not to sit directly across the table from him. Maybe sit at a bar so you can kind of look over your shoulder at him and he can look over his shoulder at you. And there's no real demand for a lot of eye contact, because some guys feel very uncomfortable with too much eye contact. So when you're at a meeting with another male, it's important, I think, in those early stages to, yes, position your body at a slight angle. Don't go mano a mano. That's going to feel very competitive, and it's going to alter the vibe to a place that you might not like it. Now, females, on the other hand, studies say are much more comfortable with just face-to-face communication. So you don't have to worry too much about that when you're in a meeting with a female. But male meetings, the studies say you're better off taking a bit of an angle with your body, at least in the early goings, while you're building rapport.
That makes sense. Especially building rapport. Like I can't imagine I was at a little league football game for my 10-year-old over the weekend, and I met one of the other dads, and we were talking, and I noticed, just taking notice, like we were side by side, and it just felt really disarming. And I
Sure.
thought to my, I thought to my, I knew this interview was coming up on Monday, and I was like, "Huh, I wonder if I want to ask Brett about this, because like if I were to stand face to face with this guy, number one, it'd be really awkward, at a game. But like even if I was talking to him face to face, like would it feel a bit odd, or would it be more disarming if I was off to an angle, like just slightly off to an angle? But yeah,
I
you
think the angle for sure. I think then you've got the game to kind of peek at too, and then you go back and forth to the conversation. Men, I think on a whole, kind of almost need a little bit of a buffer when we're building that initial relationship. Whether it's building something together or going on a hike or playing a game. I think we kind of need that activity in the peripheral to kind of add a little bit of comfort to the situation. Whereas women can meet at a birthday party, get each other's numbers, and get coffee the next day face to face and just chat for 2 hours. That's not something most guys are comfortable doing. So I think that we kind of bond in a much different way. And I think that positioning your body at a bit of an angle kind of speaks towards that as well.
I'd 100% agree with that. What about, so take me through some of these things, like, so for instance, power. Um, what what is it, first of all? Why is it important for communication and charisma?
Sure, absolutely. So just from like a 50,000 foot view, I've broken charisma down into three main pillars, right? The first one being power. You have to exhibit power to your community, you need to be a person of warmth as well. And then the third pillar is presence. And we can touch on power here. So, power basically is when you meet someone, whether you know it or not, within the first 5 seconds on a subconscious level, you are analyzing them. You're analyzing their nonverbal communication and you're wondering, is this a person of power? Is this a person that could help me? Could this person be an asset to me if I needed them? So that's power. When you walk into a room with power, people feel it and they think, wow, this person could move mountains. Maybe he can move them for me. So that's why it's important, right? And I think that dates all the way back to tribal days. Is power has always been an important thing to put on display as a man or a woman. How to show that power, especially initially, is all nonverbal. When you walk into a room and you're crunched over with poor posture, people feel that. They're not thinking in their head, oh, wow, that guy's got poor posture. He's not an asset to me. They're just feeling that on a subconscious level. So to me, I think the greatest indicator of posture initially within that first 5 seconds is posture. And I really think that making good posture a habit, a fundamental habit of how you go through life is just going to make you feel more confident. It's going to make you display more confidence. People are going to react to you differently. They're going to want to be led by you in a different fashion. Good posture to me is the absolute first skill towards displaying power towards the world.
What about how we dress and even like, our hygiene and stuff like that? Uh, is that also in the realm of power?
I think it is, of course. It's certainly to me, I would say probably maybe like a rung or two below. I think if you see someone that's really well dressed and they've got white teeth but poor posture, you're probably still not going to want to follow them into battle. But sure, I think wherever you're going, dress the part, maybe even a half step above what you think you should be for that specific party. And yeah, I think good hygiene, keeping the beard trimmed well, and keeping the fade going. For me, that's not a problem. I don't have any hair. For me, it's more so just keeping the hair off of my head. Yeah, I think all that absolutely comes into play. And speaking of good hygiene and health and all those things, I got to give you some credit because I've been tracking your 75 hard journey on Instagram, dude, and pretty incredible results. I mean, you look like a friggin' action figure right now, dude. With
I,
your shirt off. I got to give
I,
it to you, brother.
oh man, I appreciate that. What's so funny is, well, first of all, I want to share a couple of things that emerged for me as you were talking about, like just appearance, posture, power, and all that. I definitely appreciate. Thank you so much for the compliment of 75 hard. Dude, I've been working my tail off on this one. This is my sixth time doing
Whew.
75 hard. And but I'm one of those really sick, twisted people that I love the program. I actually thrive in it. I like give me guardrails and structure and I can execute. If you give me no structure or my own guardrails, I am going to be subject to my own vices, right? Like if
Love
I'm
it.
like, okay, 75 days, no alcohol, clean diet, 2 workouts a day. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to read pages every day. I'm going to drink a gallon of water every day. I'm going to take progress pick every day. Well, I could do that. I just love, there's something so dopamine in me to just check boxes off. Be like, yeah, I did that, did that, did that, did that. Right. So like, but this one, man, I'm going like I've done 75 hard in the past. I've done it, all in. I would say I've done it, 90%. I've always followed the rules. I've always done that. But I would say this one, man, like I'm going hard. Like I'm doing things in this one that I would never do before. So like I'd be like, yeah, I got my 45-minute indoor workout. I got my 45 outdoor workout. Not this time, man. I also signed up for a half marathon during this 75 hard evolution. So like my steps, I'm averaging 15 to 18,000 steps a day. I'm
Whew,
running like this
whew.
weekend as you and I are recording, I'm running 9 miles. Dude, in my life, I've never run over 4 my entire life. And this last week I ran 7. So like I'm doing things. I committed in this 75 hard. I'm like, I'm gonna do things I've never done on this one. Like I'm gonna push the limits, the limits, the limits, right? Of how hard can I go here? And it's paid off, man. Like I mean, yes, aesthetically, my body has responded really well, but dude, that is the tip of the spear. Like my mind and my clarity and how I'm operating, like I don't know if I've ever operated at this level. Like I just feel so good. But I think it's because like almost every day, definitely every week, I'm doing things I've never done, which
Sure.
has been awesome. But
Sure. That's
I
probably a big part of it. That probably is
it
a big
is.
part of it, right? Is that you're just expanding your skill set, you're pushing yourself, out of your comfort zone on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not just the reading the books or the workouts, but it's that progressive overload in like every facet of life. I think that's pretty cool. I think you've inspired some people, I'm sure, to try this thing out.
It's crazy, man. I've gotten more DMs and more emails in the past 41 days since I've been doing this on like, what are you doing? Like, we've had more members come into our ecosystem lately. We've had like people are asking me, well, what's my diet routine? What's this? With I had one guy, this is the biggest compliment I've ever had. They're like, yeah, how much gear are you on? And I'm like, are you serious? Gear? Like, I was like, I've never taken a steroid my whole life. And plus, I've never even done TRT. I've never done that. Like everything I've done, like, and granted, like I look bigger, but I'm 15 pounds lighter. I'm 175 pounds. I'm a tall, skinny dude, actually. Like I look maybe like I got muscle, but I'm tall and skinny. Like I'm 6'1", 175. So, but I want to talk more about this charisma aspect and the power and posture and confidence. So one of the things that I do, and I've been doing it a lot more lately, right now I've got 7 one-on-one clients, all for marriage. One of the things that I do is I help a man attract his wife back in to his world, right? And teach him several different skills over 3 months. One of the things, though, that I think is not on the radar of our married guys, right, is, well, I can not trim my beard and I can go longer without my haircut and I can brush my teeth every day. I might miss a day. Oh, I forgot deodorant. Like I'm going to wear, clothes that don't fit me. All my clients, I'm like, I tell these guys, I'm like, when you show up to my Zoom call, I want to make sure that you don't have to dress up for me, but I want to make sure that you're maintaining your hygiene. I want to make sure that when you're around your wife, you're wearing clothes that fit you. You don't look like a homeless guy who just walked in off the street, right? I want to see that you've brushed your teeth, that your hair is kept, right? That your beard is kept. Like things like this that kind of fall off of our radar. And I think really lower like that attraction, that confidence, that charisma, that power that I think our wives like really, really, really gravitated to in the beginning. And we kind of like lose that over time. I would love for you to just share some insights around that one.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a lot of truth to that. If anyone who's been in a long-term relationship can kind of, relate to maybe putting a little bit less into their appearance, and I've certainly fallen into that trap myself. I've had my weight go up and down over the years. I'm in a really good spot right now with fitness and hired a coach this year, which has kind of been pivotal to holding me accountable to a program and to a workout routine. And I think absolutely. I think our wives, our partners, our girlfriends, in the early stages of our relationship, they were attracted to our power, that they were attracted to our warmth, right? They saw us, they saw our power, they saw us as someone that could potentially provide for them and a family down the road. They saw our warmth, that they saw that we care about people, we care about them, we care about our mothers, the way we talk to waitresses, right? They saw our power, they saw our warmth. That is really what attracted them to us. And I think it certainly is easy as time goes on and you settle into a relationship to maybe stop exhibiting power, stop pouring into your own power, stop investing in your own power, stop investing in your own warmth. And then we wonder why we see that attraction in our relationships fade. And I think there's certainly a lot of truth to that. And I think that's why it is important that we're keeping this tool sharp, keeping that charisma tool sharp, always investing in our power, investing in our warmth, investing in our presence, investing in our social skills and our charisma. Because at the end of the day, that's a big part of what drives intimacy, what drives our connection with our partner. So yeah, I totally agree with that 100%.
Awesome. Thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, because I think it's something that we just sort of lose over time. One other question too about power.
I mean, isn't it funny? Power is just like what every guy wants to talk about, right? I've got a
I
course
do.
coming out.
Yeah.
I've got a course launching next month. It's called Charisma 25, and it's 25 days to your innate charisma. And I even make a joke in there, and I'm like, I know everyone out there wants to talk about power, and we're gonna get to power, but we got to start with presence. But anyway, I don't I
Yeah.
don't want to I
Yeah.
don't want to step on you because power is a very important thing, and it's probably the thing that most guys want to hear about. So let's stick with power for now. So go ahead.
Well, Here's the other one.
Yeah.
Like, what is the balancing act between power, confidence, and douchebag? Because like I think we can all relate to the guy that is dressed well, he's built well. And but you see him walk in, and you're like, that guy's a dick.
For
I'm
sure.
sure
A
that's
hundred
probably some
percent.
that's probably
Yeah.
some hate too, right? Of people that don't have that or they've lost it along the way. But there are guys who are just like overly douchey, right? They're like, yeah, like sorry I didn't call you back. I'm just too busy making all the money in the world that I possibly can, and like
Sure.
building this perfect physique and like all this, my beautiful wife, and oh, I just bought this McLaren over here too, by the way. Like
Right.
there there's one guy here locally, man, that like that me and my circle of friends know, and like this guy has no clue like how douchey he is. But
Mhm.
like he is like the douche of douchebags, but he thinks he's phenomenal. Like he thinks he's awesome. And I'm sure like, but like I've always been curious, like, what is that fine line between I'm confident, but I'm humble? I care about you, but I'm confident. I go out, I execute, I look good, I'm confident, but I'm not gonna be better than you type of thing. You know what I mean? And then you got people who are just like, I'm awesome, you all suck, I'm the stallion, you guys are sheep, whatever, right?
I think that's solid. And we all know those guys,
Yeah.
the McLaren driving D-bags that probably haven't asked a question, about someone's day ever. and 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 I,
Right.
I think that
Yeah.
there's like two types of people you can go to lunch with, right? There's the one
Oh
person
yeah.
that tells stories about themselves the entire time, tells you about their amazing vacations, their amazing cars, and you leave that lunch thinking, wow, that's an interesting person. And then there's the
Right.
other person that asks you questions, puts the spotlight on you a little bit more, and you leave that lunch thinking, wow, I'm a really interesting person. And I think, there's a lot of value in being that second person, the person that shines a little bit more spotlight on their conversational partner. And to me, that's kind of why I break it up into power, into warmth, and into presence. Because to me, I think there's plenty of people out there that have a lot of power, but they're kind of D-bags. To me, that's not charisma. I think you can have a lot of power and exhibit a lot of vocal power and in meetings and in business situations, but if you have no warmth to go with that power, then people aren't going to really want to be led by you. They're going to kind of resent you a little bit. And on the flip side, if you've got warmth and you clearly care for people, but you've got no power, that doesn't really work either, because then you're going to be kind of seen as a pushover. So to me, that's why I kind of think you need both, right? You need to be showing that power. You need to have good posture, do things with your voice, like add a pause every now and then. I think the power of the pause can't be understated. I think if you see people that have a lot of power and charisma, they'll add a pause in every now and then to their speech because they're so confident in their message that they know you're not going to interrupt. So I think we can do things like that to exhibit power, but I think we have to have warmth as well. We got to be good listeners. We got to be genuinely interested in those around us. And I think if we've got both, we've got the power, we've got the warmth, and we're also present in the moment. To me, that's true charisma. I think if you're missing any of those components, then you're just not going to be able to have the impact on the world that you want to.
I agree with you. And I think what we're hitting on here, I think we've displayed like this is power and confidence, right? And this over here is way over the top and you're not even relatable, right? At the same time, the warmth factor, is this just all about like, so for instance, some of the things that we were talking about, with like what we're doing with our face, like the questions we're answering, maybe even the tonality and how we're talking, is that all related to warmth or is that more presence?
Yeah, so I think warmth and presence certainly kind of overlap a little bit, but to me, I would say warmth is yes. It's being genuinely interested in the people around you. It's asking them questions about themselves, sitting back and listening. It's smiling. It's having a genuine smile. It's turning the corners of your mouth upward ever so slightly. But a lot of warmth is kind of internal. It's really about having someone's best outcome in mind, caring about other people's outcomes. I think if you genuinely care about other people's outcomes, that warmth will show. So to me, I think of warmth as almost more of an internal trait where you really just have to genuinely care of people. You have to put their best interests ahead of yours in certain instances. And I think if you have that general feeling inside of you, then the warmth will come out in your voice. It'll come out in your face. So even where I see power is kind of more of an external skill set, warmth, I think, is a bit more internal. And I think we kind of do got to do that inner work to really genuinely care about other people's outcomes.
Mm. What about presence? I mean, a lot of people kick that term around a ton. They're like, I want to be more present and intentional with my family. So we hear that a lot. But how do we actually do and be presence in your opinion?
Sure. Well, I think presence is just having a moment to moment idea, a moment to moment awareness of what's going on, listening to the person in front of you, hearing the cars around you, just paying attention to what's going on in your general atmosphere. We're never going to be able to show up powerfully to a moment without being present to that moment. We're never going to be as nimble in a conversation if we're not present to that conversation. So I think there's some things we can do to be more present. And I think number one is if you're in a conversation and or you're in a group of people, you're in a meeting and you notice that you're not being fully present. Maybe you're thinking about what you're going to say next. Maybe you're thinking about what you had for lunch. You're thinking about what type of workout you're going to do at the gym later. Focus on your breath. Always bring it back to the breath. One or two uh, breaths of just kind of awareness will bring you back to that moment like that, and then refocus your attention on the people in front of you. So I think that's one thing we can do is when we find ourselves not being present in the moment with our families or our friends, focus on your breath for a moment or two, and then refocus your attention back on the people around you that really deserve it. So I'd say that is one thing. Number two is meditation. And I think it can't be overstated that daily meditation is going to enhance our ability to bring our presence and our awareness to every interaction that we're in. And I think number three is we can practice presence every moment of the day. Whether we're in line waiting for the cash register and we're struck up a conversation with the person next to us, maybe we've got a little banter going with the barista as we're getting our coffee, try to really be present with them, watch their facial expressions move, hear the inflection of their voice. When they're telling a story, try and visualize that story in your own head. That's going to help you be a lot more present to their message. Just make it a practice. Be as present with those people as you possibly can. And if you find yourself not being present, focus on your breath for a moment and then snap back to the moment.
I like that a lot. Um, the other thing too is the breath. Like I never thought of that. Like I've always thought about, being present as in like make sure your feet are planted
Mhm.
in your shoes firmly on the ground with that person. But I never actually thought, taking a deep breath would actually do it. But as you did it, I took a deep breath and I noticed it brought me even deeper into what you were saying. And I wonder, just like I'm a geek, by nature. So I got my degree in exercise science. So I know, body anatomy, physiology, and everything else. So I'm wondering, a deep breath has a physiological response in the body. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, right? Which is more like I'm more present here in the moment. The opposite of that is the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight, flight, or freeze, right? And if we're doing like those shallow breaths that we're so in the habit of doing, we kind of agitate that system, right? Not that we're going to go off the rails or we're trying to fight, flight, or freeze, but it's a different system that we're agitating, right? I learned that actually from Mark Devine, who's a former commander in the Navy SEALs, and he founded Unbeatable Mind and SEAL Fit, and he's really into breath work. So I'm wondering if taking a few deep breaths, actually activating that rest and digest, that parasympathetic nervous system actually calms us down, which is maybe able to make us a bit more present in the moment. I don't know if you've ever done any study on that or if that's more of just a theory that I just kind of spouted out as you were sharing that.
I think there's certainly something to that. I can't say I know like the science, but behind the deep breath and why it works, but I can just tell you, from using it over the years, when I find myself not being present to the moment, it absolutely works. Another thing you can do is just kind of wiggle your toes, just like a physical sensation of wiggling your toes and kind of use that as your anchor. And then you get back to the moment. So I think either a deep breath or just a toe wiggle in your shoes, if you find your mind kind of running away a little bit, can really bring you back to the moment. And when you're being present with people, they can feel it, you know,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
something that it's something they so rarely get is full presence. And I mean, it's really the greatest gift you can give another human is your full presence to them, to their message, to the interaction that you're having with them. I mean, it feels like the sunlight on your skin. And to me, it's a superpower. To me, that is the one undefinable, just undeniable superpower of human interaction, is just the ability to be present with the person that you're sitting with.
And people, you're right. People can feel it. You can, like, I can always sense, and granted, I'm talking about my dad again, but like, he's one person that I can read. And when he's listening to me, I can definitely feel that. But then when I can tell there's too many things on his mind and his mind is running, I can totally see it at the same time. Um,
I can
which is
relate to
really,
that
yeah,
for
which is
sure.
kind of fascinating.
I can relate to that with my father, definitely.
Okay,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the bad thing is I probably do it to my own kids, and I just need to be more conscious of it myself. So like it's the pot calling the kettle black. Let me ask you about eye contact. So I remember my mom was married to this guy. He's my stepdad. He's actually has the reason I have the last name I do. They were married from the time I was 4 to I was 10. He was so big on manners and being polite to people. Yes or no, sir. This is how you shake somebody's hand. This is posture. Like, I think he was kind of pretty big, like on maybe like that power dial, of like making sure that you were confident, right? And my dad always made a big deal about eye contact. And the more I studied eye contact, I got mixed information from different places. So a lot of people are like, anytime you're in a conversation with someone, you lock in eye contact and you're locked in, right? That you have to let the other person know that you're fully engaged in the conversation. And then I've also read literature to where if you do that, it scares the shit out of people. And you're like, God bless. What are you, a psychopathic cold killer? Like I feel like I can't even like look away because you're just like. So like, what is the story with eye contact?
For sure. And listen, there are certainly different theories on it, right? I think everyone can agree that eye contact is important and that it fosters human connection. It's been important. It always will be important. And for the most part, I'd say a lot of people make less than they should, but you can certainly overdo it as well. So for me, when I'm working with people and if they're really uncomfortable with eye contact, there's someone that makes eye contact like 20% of the time, or maybe they're one of those people, and I see this a lot when they're first introduced to someone and they're shaking someone's hand, they kind of close their eyes when they're shaking their hand. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but they kind of close their eyes a little bit like an elongated blink while they're meeting the person. There's a lot of people out there who are just very uncomfortable with eye contact. It's intense. You can feel a person's soul when you look into their eyes. I mean, it's really kind of unlike anything else. So when I'm working with someone who really feels uncomfortable with eye contact, I say, don't look in their eyes. I say, look in between their eyes at the bridge of their nose and just get comfortable looking at that part of their face and then gradually move on to the eyes when you feel more comfortable doing that. But as far as the other side of the spectrum, and I think we all know people that just lock into our eyes and look into our eyes for the entire conversation, and it kind of scares the hell out of you. We don't want to do that either. So to me, I think that there is probably a percentage that we want to stick to, and it's the 50-70 rule. I didn't invent this. This has been around for a long time, but I think it's a good one to stick to, basically. So the 50-70 rule says that when you're listening to someone, make eye contact 70% of the time. Look away once in a while. You don't got to lock in for the entire conversation. And when you're speaking, make eye contact for 50% of the time. So look at someone's eyes, look away to kind of gather your next thought as you're speaking, and look into someone's eyes. You'll notice great storytellers do that. They'll make eye contact with the crowd, and then they'll kind of look off into the distance as they're grabbing specific elements of the story, and then they go back to eye contact again. You'll see great presenters do this as well. So I think the 50-70 rule is just kind of a good ratio to keep in mind to not overdo it.
I so agree with that. Um, what about the direction of eye contact? Like, so I noticed, like, I have a friend of mine that when I talk to him, and I don't take it personally because I honestly think that I've seen him interact with other people, and I know that it's just the way he listens. And when someone starts to talk, like let's just say it's me and you, right? When someone starts to talk, he'll kind of like do this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I know, right? Yeah, 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 that one too. But like he'll literally look away, like completely, and he'll actually look down and to the side. but I know he's listening to every word that
Mhm.
I'm saying, but it's really sort of fascinating. And one time I even asked him about that. I'm like, just out of curiosity, why do you do that? He's like, yeah, I kind of forget that I do that. He goes, I do that for a couple of reasons. He goes, when I look at someone talking, sometimes I get distracted
Mhm.
by like just them in general. He's like, but if I can kind of like look away and just hear them, I capture more of what they're saying. And I was like, that's really interesting. Like I've never heard that. But for him, that's like a listening hack that he's really gravitated to.
That's
But I
pretty
can also,
interesting.
yeah, it is very interesting. But can you just go over the listening aspect, because man, the speaking aspect made a whole lot of sense to me. In fact, when I speak, like that's one of the things I was trained on, like don't directly look at the audience all the time, right?
Mhm.
Put in those very purposeful pauses, when you have a thought or something, like if you're going to do something funny before you say whatever it is, a funny part of the story, you'll want to kind of like look out and smile, pause for a second, because that way you're cueing the audience that something funny is probably going to come and they're more engaged in it. They're like waiting for it. But from the listening standpoint, um, I definitely understand like not too much nodding, because yeah, that does indicate like I just want you to like me, right?
Mhm.
But also I can also understand too, like if you were to look away while someone's talking, it's almost distracting, and the person talking is wondering, is that person fully present with me?
I think that so long as you return the gaze to their eyes relatively quickly, it'll be mostly taken as, okay, this person is really just taking what I'm saying and they're thinking about it and they're processing it. And I think so long as you look away, you look down or you look up and then you return your gaze to their eyes and you continue to, make sure that you're looking at them for that 70% of the time, which is a majority of the time, right? It's really like, you're looking at them, you look away, and then you're right back to the eyes. I think for the most part, people are not going to see that as disrespectful. It's not going to take them out of the moment. It's not going to take them out of their message. I think if anything, that they're going to appreciate the momentary break in tension, because eye contact, builds a little bit of tension. It does. It builds a little bit of energy, in our bodies, and I think we can all appreciate a momentary break. It's almost like a workout, right? You take a little break in between sets, but you get back to the workout. So to me, I think that most people will appreciate you looking away every so often, so long as you return to the gaze, and a majority of the time you are making eye contact while they're delivering their message.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay, so we've gone over presence, we've gone over warmth, we've gone over power. What else is there?
I mean, to me, those are the building blocks for a charismatic personality and someone that can really move mountains, someone that can really make a difference on this planet is someone that can exhibit power, through their speech and through their nonverbal behavior, and someone that can exhibit warmth. And a lot of that is internal, but some of it is external as well. The ability to cast a genuine smile, to really care about people, and then the ability to be present to a moment. I think if you really hone those three skills, there's almost no limits to what you can do in this world.
I agree with you, man. Talk to me before we jump off here. I'm so curious. Talk to me a little bit about, what does having a device in your hand serve for charisma, or how does it take away from your charisma?
Well, I mean, if you're in an interaction, you're in a face-to-face conversation, I think, having a phone in your hand is never going to enhance your charisma. It's just going to take you away from the moment. I think, if you're holding a device and you're filming an Instagram story, that's a different thing. But I would say for the most part, and a lot of times, like I actually got an Apple Watch really for this specific purpose, so that I can be a little disconnected from my phone while still being able to respond to urgent messages. Like if I go to a barbecue or a party, I'll leave my phone in the car a lot of the time. I've got my Apple Watch. If someone really needs to reach me, they can still reach me, but it forces me to really be 100% present to the moment with the people around me while I'm at that party. So I would say phone in your hands while you're interacting with other human beings is not going to make you more charismatic.
I would agree. Simon Sinek has a really fantastic video on this, where he talked about like, if you have a device in your hand and someone's talking to you, they actually don't feel like you're fully present. Like they might not even articulate it out loud, and even consciously, from a conscious level, they might not even realize it, but subconsciously it's there. But as soon as like you have like your phone in your hand and someone says, "Hey, can I have a minute?" and you put the phone down and say, "Absolutely. What do you need? What can I do for you?" Right? And the message that that sends, I think, from power, presence, and warmth, like literally just taking your phone, setting it face down, and then talking to the person, I would think is would move mountains for how connected somebody feels to you.
Certainly helps. Even the phone on the table, I think, can cause a distraction. I think if you can just
Yeah,
remove it from sight, I think that's probably going to be your best bet to foster as much human connection as possible.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Well, I'm curious as we wrap up here, like what's your mission behind this? Like, what are you wanting to do?
Sure. Yeah. My mission is just to help men feel more comfortable in their skin so that they can move the missions that are important to them forward.
I love it. I love it. And where can guys find you?
Sure. So my Instagram is at the Brett McDermott. That's where I'll post most of my communication and charisma hacks on a daily basis. And then I've got the podcast Persistence Playbook, where we had yourself on a few weeks back, and we have a wide ranging, you know, topics on that show. We talk communication, we talk persistence, courage, all types of stuff. So I'd say at the Brett McDermott or Persistence Playbook, best two places to find myself.
Gotcha. Did you interview Fraser yet?
No, not yet.
Oh man,
Not
you
yet.
guys got to go check out Fraser Bailey. He's Chris Daughtry's nutrition coach, and he's a vegan bodybuilder, and he looks like my kids call him the Incredible Hulk. Like I'm not
It,
kidding.
it's incredible the amount of protein you can get just from plants.
I I've known Fraser. He's if you want to know why I'm looking the way I do is I've actually followed Fraser's program.
No way,
He
huh?
yeah he's got a program called Superhuman 2.0 where he basically teaches you how to train and how to eat and like literally like training is like I always thought I trained hard. I don't train hard. Fraser
Mm.
trains hard. Like that
Right.
guy, like he's all about like rest pause sets, mechanical failure. Like literally you cannot move you can't go to the range of motion anymore. Like that's how he trains. And but he's been awesome. But he's gonna be a great interview for you. You guys got to go check out Fraser Bailey. He's been on my podcast. He'll be on Brett's podcast as well. But one of the coolest stories, one of the coolest individuals, and the guy's got more muscles than he knows what to do with, and he eats tofu every day. And I'm like, how? I mean,
Unreal.
I've been like 80% plant-based now since I've worked with him for the past 5 years. But like I
Okay.
would joke with him, I'm like, dude, there's no way you're plant-based. You're lying. He's like, no, seriously, I've been plant-based for 8 years.
That's
But
wild.
yeah, it's crazy. But he trains
That's
like a
wild.
savage. So well, dude, guys, not to worry. We're going to have all the links in the show notes. Head on over to the dadedge.com/Friday 171 for this show. We'll have Brett's Instagram in there. This releases at the end of August. So hopefully you'll have the course done by then. If not, we'll input it in there if you guys are catching this episode later on. But we'll have all of his information and everything in there for you guys. But Brett, man, thank you so much for coming on today. This was such a powerful educational session for me as well. Got to learn about facial expressions, got to learn about voices and posture and hygiene and all this good stuff. I love how you also incorporate the warmth and the presence in there. It's so good, man.
I appreciate it, brother. And for anyone out there that's listening, if they found just one hack that they find interesting, go practice it. Go to a barbecue, go to the bar, go hang out with some friends and intentionally practice these skills. It's the only way to get better at them.
Yeah, that's so true. And I love doing them at like low stakes like um social interactions like that where you're like your Starbucks barista, the barbecue, you're at a kid's birthday with a bunch of other adults, it's a good spot to do these things.
Sure. It's the one
Yeah,
skill we can practice all day long, every day.
that's true. That's true. Guys, like I said, thedadedge.com/Friday 171 for this show. Go out and live charismatically legendary. Take care.